Sure, ma'am. Sure. No.
So, shall we
Yeah.
start formally this program?
Yes, Manoj sir, shall we start? Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much. So, good afternoon, everyone. Uh, so, it is an honor to be here today as we gather to explore the crucial themes of quality education, gender equality, and strong institutions under SDG 4, 5, 10, and 16. Our theme of EDP is empowering change towards sustainability and equality in higher education. It is not just a call to action but a commitment to shaping a future where education serves the foundation for equitable and sustainable development. So, quality education is the cornerstone of progress, fostering critical thinking and inclusivity. Gender equality ensures that everyone, regardless of gender, has the opportunity to succeed and lead. And strong institutions are essential for implementing effective policies, ensuring justice, and maintaining peace in academia. So they play a critical role in promoting transparency, accountability, and inclusiveness, which are fundamental to achieving the SDGs. Today we have opportunity to discuss and collaborate on strategies to integrate these principles into higher education. So thank you one and all for joining us in the journey towards more just, sustainable and equitable academia. So this is about our program. For next, I welcome Professor Bharti for welcome address. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mona. So, on behalf of the School of Law, Manipal University, Jaipur, I extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished chief guest, Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha, Vice Chancellor, DNLU, Jabalpur. I also extend welcome to our guest, Dr. Kalpesh Kumar Gupta, founder, Law Teachers India, and a hearty welcome to all my colleagues at the School of Law, MUJ, and to all the participants who have joined from different parts of the country. On this very important executive development program, which is being held on a very important theme of change towards sustainability and equality in higher education based on SDGs 4, 5, 10, and 16. I think we are well aware as to the whole concept of SDGs, how they have been introduced. Initially through the Brundtland Commission of 1987, when the first structured definition of sustainable development came about. Thereafter, it was the 1992 Rio Conference, in which the whole cornerstone of the conference itself was sustainable development, and it was given a fillip and a momentum through Agenda 21 and the accompanying conventions on climate change, on biodiversity, forest principles, and so on. And of course, after the new century began, we have the post 2015 global agenda before us in the form of SDG goals. And further, we have the Paris Agreement and we have the disaster risk reduction, the Sendai framework that is there. So these are the three very important goals that have been prescribed before the world community. And SDG goals, they are of course 17 in number. There are accompanying targets of 169 and indicators, which are 231 unique indicators and 248 in total. And just to very quickly go through SDGs, so SDG 4, which talks about quality education. And this, of course, has its important parameters of affordability, accessibility, non discrimination, and ultimately quality. And quality education in the context of legal education is very important to understand. What does it really connote? And of course, we have the various accreditation and rankings, which are enormous in the form of NAC and in the form of NIRF. So there is a lot to really understand and to imbibe and to incorporate. But of course, quality education, it has a very important target, which I would just like to draw attention. It is education. This is perhaps target 7, education for sustainable development and global citizenship, which has one particular indicator and which relates to the extent to which global citizenship education and education for sustainable development, including gender equality and human rights, are mainstreamed at all levels in national education policies, curriculum, teacher education, and student assessment. Further, we have the next important SDG, which is SDG 5, which talks about gender equality, which which is which really indicates which really strives for ending all forms of discrimination against women and girls and elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls, including harmful practices such as child, early, and forced marriages. Here again, we have to look through the prism of the legal education in India and to what extent we are able to have an absolutely equal and an equitable situation for women and girls at par with the boys in the law schools. The kind of promotions and activities and opportunities which are extended to both without any kind of hesitation. Then we have the third SDG, which is relevant, which is SDG 10, which talks about reduced inequalities. And here, of course, this is reduced inequality within and amongst countries. And then the last SDG is it talks about peace, justice, strong institutions, and there is the promotion of rule of law and to ensure equal access to justice. This is given in target 30, target 3. This is something somewhat extremely relevant for our purposes as a law school. It has 3 indicators which spell out proportion of victims of violence in the previous 12 months who reported their victimization to competent authorities and other officially recognized conflict resolution mechanisms, unsentenced detainees as a proportion of overall prison population and proportion of the population who experienced a dispute in the past 2 years and who accessed a formal or informal dispute resolution mechanism. So it is indicative again of 2 important points emerge from here. One is the criminal justice system as to how strong or what is the strength of it and to what extent we are able to really ensure justice uh, to the victims of violence as well as the unsentenced detainees. The third is the formal and informal mechanism. So this is again, it stipulates the alternate dispute resolution mechanisms and to what extent they have been now integrated in our justice dispensation system. There is another target 10, which talks about to ensure public access to information. This is within this the SDG goal 16, and this talks about how to ensure public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms in accordance with national legislation and international agreements. So I'm sure all these aspects of the various species and the various the component elements of SDGs targets and indicators will uh, come up fully through the very meaningful thematic discussions which are part of this EDP, and it is hoped that a very crucial insights will come through the expert speakers, and they would be able to steer the discussion towards the important and significant contemporary issues. Wishing the best for the success of the event, and once again a warm welcome to all at the Executive Development Program at the School of Law, Manipal University, Jaipur. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I welcome Dr. Kalpesh Kumar Gupta, sir, for thematic presentation of this EDP. Thank you. Over to you, sir. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Mona, respected Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha, sir, respected Bharti ma'am, Dr. Soni, Dr. Mariam, and all the team members and all the participants. So well, let me tell you, like I'm part of a organizing committee, not a guest for the day. So Dr. Mona, she approached me a couple of months back. So let us plan this thing with because we have been doing various programs like faculty development programs, the refresher course and various things. So it was a very good program. So the thought, so I, no, get the program. I said, look, we'll be there to support, and then we floated this and idea, and then so far around maybe 900 plus registrations are there. The faculty members, students, and then professionals all over the India they have participated in this program. Let me connect, like for example, like goal 4 and 16. So yesterday we concluded the 1 week capacity building program on right to education. Again, it was very under the Pro Bono India initiative. That's our one of initiative like Law Teachers India. So most of the participants, like faculty members, student, professional, they were like shocked to see what's happening in under the realm of right to education. RT, we know Article 21A is there, right to education, and various things happening. And before independence, what were happening? And there's a suggestion by Professor Nalini, she's an activist on the right to education. She suggested there should be more and more the legal aid, assistance required in this area because things are there on, act paper, but many things are missing on ground. Once you see the right, education part, especially like, the TART focusing on the children from 6 to 14 years of age. So we can select like access to justice again. The Goal 16 talks about access to justice. All of you must be aware about like 80% of the India's population they are eligible for legal aid. Legal service authorities there and then came into force in 1995. Still, many are I would say not aware about this particular act. Let me tell you, like whenever keep asking people like do you know about this act? I keep getting calls from all over the India. They so sorry, like no, we are not aware about this particular act. So this is our duty to promote various way. We have to interlink this all the goals, right? We cannot focus on particular goal, for example, education, and forget about this particular goal. So we have to integrate this particular goal, and then we'll be able to achieve whatever objective set up on this SDG. So thank you very much. I'm grateful to Manipal University School of Law for giving the opportunity to be a part of this particular great initiative, the unicorn, I would say, what we have been doing for last couple of years. I'm grateful to Manoj Kumar Sinha sir for joining and gracing the today's occasion. Thank you very much. Over to Dr. Moon.
Thank you, sir. Now I welcome Professor Manoj Kumar sir as the chief guest of this ADP. Today we are honored of being in the presence of true visionary and great academician in the field of law. So sir is currently working as a VC of
So
Dharam
thank you
Shastra
very
National Law
much. Mona,
University.
you you did not introduce Bharti or Kalpesh, so you continue with me also. Allow me to take that liberty, and that is very good. So I'm very happy, so leave it. Your introduction will unnecessarily consume lot of time, and
Okay,
nothing substantive will come out of that. So let's start with the. I think I have 20 minutes or something. No, 2:30 to 3.
yes.
That is the like plan. So further, uh, let me thank Professor Bharti, you and Kalpesh for thinking about a program or Manipal Law University Jaipur and Law Teachers India for planning a topic like on very limited discussions had taken place. If I say discussion, it started after COVID, little bit later. So we are already late, and we are also late in assessing and evaluating the sustainable development goals because we are more or less completed two-thirds of the period. It started from the 1st January 2016 sustainable development goals, and before that millennium development goals were there with the 8 goals were there in the millennium development goals, which was adopted in 2000. And then both goals, like if I go back to the 2000 when the United Nations General Assembly and members of the United Nations, they thought, what is the major challenge before the international community? And they said, extreme form of poverty is the major challenge, and that is to how to eradicate extreme form of poverty, and that was the beginning. So first they adopted millennium declarations in 2000 in September, and subsequently declaration has millennium development goals which came with the 8 and set an agenda that we will try to work together and eradicate extreme form of poverty by the 2013 And every 5 years, outcome documents World Conference took place in 2005, 2010. And some way progress was not satisfactory. And as Professor Bharti has mentioned, in the year 2012, when Rio Plus 20 took place, and sustainable development figured as a very important agenda in 2012. So a member state decided a committee was constituted to working group kind of committee was constituted to United Nations to revisit development goals and come out with a new idea. And that is how in 2015, Sustainable Development Goals was adopted, but it started uh, on the 1st January 2016 onwards. So 2030 is the end period. I will say so 15 years of end period in 2030 is the end period. So and this is the time, like we are on the last leg. So any effort, any discussion which are like for 3-4 days takes place, we have to come out with concrete solution to expediting the implementation of the sustainable development goals. But an interesting point which I noted in the Niti Aayog, so some way they have localized the sustainable development, localization of sustainable development here, and said that this goal will continue because we want Viksit Bharat in 2047, a developed nation. So these goals are very integrated. So we don't need to worry about whether it comes to end in 2030 at the global level, but it will continue and implementation and work in India as because we have to become a Viksit Bharat by 2014, and that is mentioned under the report of the Niti Aayog. I'll come there how it's being implemented in India. So, so when we look into the sustainable development goals which we have, uh, what we notice in this, like four goals you have identified, like quality education, that is the sustainable development goals, gender equality, that is the sustainable development goal 5. Then you have reduce inequality among the nations, that is the goal 10, and then goal 16, which is strong institution. These are the 4 goals we identified for today's discussion and maybe subsequently discuss it. But a close look of sustainable development goals is like it addresses 3 broad areas, if I say, that is the social goals, economic goals, and environmental goals. Social goals, economic goals, and environmental goals. So when we talk about the social goals, we see 1 to 6 is the social goals mentioned under the 1 to 6 goals are somewhere related with the social goals, that education, gender equality, and other. 7 to 11 is more related with economic goals, and subsequently 12 to 15 is are more on the environmental, and 16 of course the institutions, and 17 it talks about the working together collectivism, that is that can be global partnership. And that global goal 17 is stand alone goal, that is the global partnership in the end, that goal 17 is there. And the implementation, if you have to look into the sustainable development implementation, is like for each member states, mobilization of fund, that is the financial. So what sustainable development goals, you can say, uh, without looking into any documents, we can effectively conclude and agree or recognize the sustainable development goals are reflection of the part 4 of the Indian Constitution, or economic, social, and cultural rights mentioned under the various human rights. So sustainable development goals, in a way, it promotes the implementation of human rights, promote to protect of the human rights, and that is so sustainable development goals. So we can say it's a human rights basically mentioned under the part 4 of the Indian Constitution, and and also under the international human rights instruments. So most important, the issue remains before each nation state is the financial capacity. Then of course planning is important. The only identifying goal will not serve the purpose. So financial resources becomes very important. Then the second is the capacity building, like, whether we have institution and other factors are equally important. And that is why, as a teacher of constitutional law, Professor Bharti, Professor Kalpis, myself, always say why the directive principle of state policy under Article 37 has made non-enforceable, because implementation remained a big challenge. So it was remained a big challenge in the time of adoption of the constitution, and same way sustainable development goals remain a big challenge in implementation. When we look into the how sustainable development goals is being implemented in India, that is the another important, which are bodies which are responsible for the implementation of the sustainable goal. If I, as Professor Bharti has mentioned in our presentation, like welcome address, that there are 17 SDG and 169 targets. There are, each goal has certain targets, and 306 national targets are there. And that is the broader agenda of sustainable development goals. And the heart, or the soul of the sustainable goals, if I say, which they have also mentioned, leave no one behind. That is the soul of the sustainable, leave no one behind. So it's a very inclusive, everyone has to be uplifted, if poverty, from the poverty, everyone has to have a quality education, end of, like, gender equality, in reduce inequality, number of aspects which we are there. So leave no one behind, that is the soul of the sustainable development goal. In India, the sustainable development goals are being implemented. So what I mentioned, and like, Kalpesh, you can also, in the, or the teachers who are going to teach, there's a report. Luckily, the report which I have said just looked into Sustainable Development Goals Index and how it is being implemented in India. That is the Niti Aayog 23-24. So July is the latest report. So all the information are very important. So that can be shared with the participant, and each goal, how far we have implemented. So that is very important document. And latest, it's not 2018, it's at 2024. It's a July, it's there. So Niti Aayog has been made as a nodal point. So they coordinate with the various ministries for mapping schemes related to the SDG and their targets, and supporting each ministry, how it has to be there. In addition to the Niti Aayog, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation also plays an important role when it comes to the implementation of the sustainable development goals. Just I'll take few minutes or remaining time focusing on the specific goals as you have identified. So when we look into the first, and that is very interesting, and I'm very happy, and many of you might have seen, when you look into the National Education Policy 2020, so National Education Policy, in introduction, the first goal which you have identified is mentioned there in the sustainable. So there's recognition of Sustainable Development Goal 4 is integral part of the national education policy, and it says that national education policy kept in the mind the vision of the national sustainable development goal 4, which talks about, so it's like a global educational development agenda. So the government of it, so this is a national education policy, but they have global development education agenda. They said globally competitive, and they said we have taken note of the sustainable development goal 4, which says ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So some way, National Education Policy 2020 reflected strongly about the values or about the uh, uh, importance of the goal 4 is there. And how government, so I have looked into the what are the initiatives of government of India has taken. So it's more on the school education and higher education and national education policy. What are the initiative government of India has taken so far in there, in the under the each, like, goals which you have mentioned. So if I say under the quality education, so government says we have Samagra Shiksha, New India Literacy Program, midday meal, pre and post matric scholarship, PM Sri School एकलव्य मॉडल, राष्ट्रीय आविष्कार अभियान, नेशनल मीन्स कम स्कॉलरशिप, पढ़े भारत बढ़े भारत, स्किल स्ट्रेंथनिंग फॉर इंडस्ट्रियल वैल्यू इनहांसमेंट, PM उच्चतर शिक्षा abhiyan. So these are the initiative government says ki we have taken under the sustainable development goals. In the gender equality, if I say, it's a very alarming, and it's very alarming also the that one of the goal target is the sex birth ratio in India, and particularly many states like Daman and Diu, the UT has 817. Haryana has a very poor. Himachal Pradesh. So number earlier only Haryana. This time, if you look into index, many 5 to 6 states are coming closer to the between 850 or something. So there's a wide sex ratio gap exists in the current situation. The finding of the United Nations, they said, to bring the equality, it will take number of years. So there's a failure on the part of the international community. It's widely recognized by them. They say, this is the problem. We have not achieved anything. So gender equality, what we have a goal under the, it has a remain both education also, but gender equality, they said it will take number of years in the report of the United Nations. So the target which has been set, it remains, we have to work a lot for the domestically and globally. It's not a concern only for the India. So while implementation of SDGs should not be viewed in isolation, you say, India is doing well. We have to see how South Asian country, India is a collective effort. We have to achieve, and same time we have to ensure that our neighboring countries also move, implement. So we have a more collective efforts is working together, that approach there. So what government says, what are the initiative we have taken? So I started with the gender equality, highlighting that there is a huge gap. There's a gap that has not been achieved, but still government has certain programs started under the gender equality, and government says under the Niti Aayog, these are the areas we have identified. The most important, which we all know, the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme, the Prime Minister keeps on saying, Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, Mudra Yojana, जननी सुरक्षा योजना, शक्ति सदन, कस्तूरबा गांधी बालिका विद्यालय, प्रगति scholarship scheme for girls, women helpline scheme, one stop center scheme. So these are the union governments, like initiative, and then each state has also some independent initiative for the bringing women in the gender equality there. Some of the areas, of course, we see, as Professor Bharti has mentioned, but we see when it's a in the context of law schools, particularly legal education, or even in the education, higher education, participation of women have increased, no doubt ever. When we go into the college, we see large number of women are coming, particularly in the urban areas compared to the rural areas. But there is a gap. There are a large number of women could not make it for various reasons. So we have to see that those who are left, they should also be integrated in the scheme, and they should take all the benefit. The last 2 point quickly, the reduced inequalities is also in a big challenge, and there is government has number of initiative, and there they say aspirational districts and block program, vibrant village program, Pradhan Mantri Vishkarma scheme, umbrella program for development of minorities, umbrella program for development of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other scheme for development of backward classes, denotified, nomadic, and PM development initiative for Northeast, a scheme for development of economically backward classes, Pradhan Mantri Jan Vikas Kalyan. So even the reduced inequalities means equalities exist among the uh, among the socially, economically backward classes, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes. So there are a lot of schemes which are going. There are constitutional provisions. There are a lot of schemes which are already in the part of the fundamental rights, and also effort by the government is continuing is there. Of course, after becoming part of the SDG, it required double support. So we have already constitutional scheme. Then you have SDG. Then you have also policies. So we hope these are the things which government has said is going to be fulfilled in days to come or years to come. The last, which I say, the peace, justice, and strong institution. What government has done, that, in the local perspective, I think this is very important when it comes to the establishing peace. A peace, what I mean, It's a peace at the universal level or the global level, the peace. So what is happening in the Ukraine and Russia, what is happening in Israel and Gaza, and there are number of conflicts which we are not aware much, but it's taking place in the Africa and other continent. There are low conflict is there. There are ethnic conflicts are there. There are internal conflicts are there. So peace and justice becomes very important. And peace justice can be established only if institutions are strong. We have a questions at the international level. We doubt the efficacy of the United Nations. We raise what United Nations is there. So we started looking into we started looking the institutional with uh, doubt. They are not performing. So strong institution is required. It's not the job of the any head of the state to go and speak about the bring peace, because we have given the charter. United Nations charter says that the Security Council of the United Nations has duty to maintain international peace and security. When it comes to there, so UN has more responsibility, not the state. But we look forward for the how United States is going to react, how Russia is going to react, how China is there. So in today's world, we need institution, not the state. In the multipolar, where state can exchange their ideas more freely, state can take their ideas the way they want. So strengthening of institution, establishing peace and justice, it's required like the institution has to be strengthened. And who will strengthen institution? You have a setup. State will is state, I mean, the member states of the United Nations. They have to work objectively. Now there are limitations itself under the institution, and that is the reason these institutions are incapable in certain occasions. They are capable in certain occasions. When it comes to the engaging or discussing about the 5 permanent members, we see some difficulties. So there is reform is required. I think today strengthening and reforming the institutions are equally important. We should not wait for the India or Pakistan or other state to play role. We should look towards the United Nations to play an important role when it comes to domestically. What we have done, that government of India says the modernization of police forces, Right to Information Act, Rashtriya Gram Suraksha Abhiyan, Integrated Child Program. So the way we have understood peace, justice, and strong institution, we have identified, but I think it's a misfit with the peace and justice, what has been there and what we have incorporated. It has to work more in the global perspective, because the sustainable development goal is not goal for one nation. It's a global. This is the first time we all are working together. Nations, states have agreed we work together to eradicate extreme form of poverty. So it's the obligation of India to help the Somalia, in the obligation of the India to help the Kenya, Ethiopia, and others. You can't goals and say ki Mali, Afghanistan, and other countries will be able to implement, because they don't have infrastructure, they don't have resources, they don't have any planning. So number of states depend upon the all of us to work together. I'm sure that the work, the theme you have selected, it's very apt and very though late on the, but in India you are very, I think Kalpesh 1 or 2 times have done that. This particular topic should have been part of the our lessons in the LLM and LLB. So we missed, but still it's not late. We continue to do this exercise, and we have to see how to each government has to think, give a special attention to the implementation of the sustainable development goals in the remaining years. Then goals will be pushed, the goal will be implemented. Still there will be gap, but some it requires to be revisited by the nation states, and a special push is required in remaining 4.5 years. With this I come to the end, and I thank হয়ে গেছে, just says, don't worry. So thank you very much for giving an opportunity. And we come to the
Sorry, I'm sorry. Participant, please keep your mic muted. I'm sorry, sir.
no, no issue. So all right, so
Yes.
thank you very much. Just these are the points which I wanted to highlight. I'm sure the discussion which will, the resource person will come and discuss and interact with the participants on the topic, and they will carry forward once they finish this training program in their respective university and colleges. So thank you very much, Mona. Thank you, Professor Bharti, and thank you, Kalpesh ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening words. Uh, I welcome Dr. Mariam Ishrat Bates, ma'am, for vote of thanks.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Mona. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it's my privilege to extend vote of thanks on behalf of Department of Law, Arts and Science, Faculty of Law, Manipal University, Jaipur. First, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to our distinguished guest for today's event, Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Sinha, the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dhamshala National Law University, Jabalpur. Thank you, sir, for your presence here, for your profound insights, and we are grateful for your valuable time and presence, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
We wish to acknowledge the support of Dr. Kalpesh Kumar L. Gupta, founder Pro Bono India and Law Teachers India, for being so instrumental in facilitating this event. Thank you so much, Kalpesh sir. Thank you so much. And we are thankful to our esteemed Dean, Professor Dr. Bharti Kumar, and our HOD, Dr. Soni Kulshresht, for being always supportive and cooperative. And in last, I want to thanks to Dr. Mona for being convener of this executive development program with me for all our efforts actually in bringing this program to life. It's all our efforts actually. We are here in this event. We are going forward. And along with this, I want to give my thanks to all the participants, our faculty members, our students for being with us all the times. And I hope we will make a difference surely towards a better and a positive world with this insight. I want to once again thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, Mona Bharti ji, I can leave now.
Thank you, sir, so much for being here. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for thank you.
All the participants are requested to be in the meeting. We will start in 5 minutes.
Hello. Good afternoon, Nabeela. Are you there? Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Our guest has joined. Yes. Can start. Yeah. Nabeela, are you there?
Yeah, she's there.
She'll be joining again. That's why if you. Uh,
Okay. So should I give the introduction of, should I introduce Dr. Nabeela to the audience?
no, yeah, because
Meanwhile, she's,
join connect. Yes.
she's connected.
Let her join. आपने इनको join करने दीजिए. She's joining again. She just sent me a message.
Am I
Hello.
audible, Kalpesh?
Hello. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes,
Welcome, welcome,
yes, sir.
welcome.
Am I audible
Yeah.
now? Yeah, yeah. There was some issue, I think.
Sorry, sir. No
The
problem.
access. Yeah, no issues, no issues, sir. Yeah. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. Yes, Dr. Mariam, over to you.
Today. So, good afternoon, everyone, and you all are welcome in the first session of this 5 days long EDP Executive Development Program. And today our distinguished guest is Professor Nabeela Siddiqui. So we welcome you, ma'am, in this program. And before we start, I want to introduce Professor Nabeela to all the participants. So Professor Nabeela Siddiqui is an assistant professor at Vinayaka Missions Law School, VMLS, Chennai. She has previously worked with Christ University, Dhamshala National Law University, Jabalpur, and the National Green Tribunal, Principal Bench, New Delhi. She was awarded the prestigious President of India, Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma Gold Medal, the Ines Prize, the Kamakal Prize, and the V. Suresham Memorial Award for a Master's from University of Madras, Chennai. She is regularly writes for leading newspaper, national newspaper, the Hindu, Economic, Political Weekly, Financial Express, etc. And she has contributed as an expert consultant in the advisory on Riverine Island and recently as an expert consultant for the creation of SOP for the large gathering along the river banks, which is jointly prepared by the National Institute of Urban Affairs and Namami Gange. Her doctoral studies focuses on the area of water cooperation, international water law, and the climate change. So we all welcome you, Professor Nabeela Siddiqui. And it's over to you now. The session is yours. And I just want to tell you everyone that today's topic is Introduction to Sustainable Development and the SDGs. So welcome again, Professor, and over to you.
Thank you so much, professors, for inviting me. Thank you so much, Dr. Kalpesh sir, Dr. Mariam, Dr. Mona. And of course, my guru is there at Manipal, that Dr. Bharti. So, of course, I wouldn't have said no to this opportunity. My very long time colleague and companion, Dr. Kalpesh, is there. So, this is a very nice, very timely thought topic for an executive development program. Now, why I say it's timely, because it's a very interesting time to discuss all of these things that we're going to discuss today. And it's also interesting to see that if we've been reading the news recently, there is supposed to be a UN summit for the future in September 2024, which is, let's say, just a month more, and then we'll be going ahead with the UN summit. And for the first time, if you read the news that has been coming, it says that, urgent reform is needed of the United Nations. Why do you need the urgent reform of United Nations? So that it could restore global progress, especially on sustainable development goals. Now, this has been one of the most important headlines that has been discussed very recently. And very recently, people are talking about UN's role in implementing SDGs, maintaining global peace, and how a UN 2.0 should be, talked about. We already have the United Nations organization there, but a reformation within the UN itself is very much required to talk about SDGs. Now, before we progress to the SDG, because I really love looking at the history, especially because there are times where we have different narratives of history as well. So when we look at the history very specifically, I'm going to look at it from a perspective of environment, and then we'll go ahead discussing of SDG. Now, if I ask any of my students in the class, or per se, any of the programs that I go in, when I ask them that, what is the history that you can trace for environmental law? Everyone would say, ma'am, 1972 was very important, and it became the landmark year for environmental law specialists, and very specifically environmental law and international environmental law also, because 1972 we signed the Stockholm Conference. That's true for a reason. I agree to it partially, but is it actually the starting point? That's not true, because we've had much more developments even before. But let's say, okay, we need to mark a date, then yes, okay, for the feasibility of efforts, 1972 makes sense. So 1972, we come up with the Stockholm Conference, and India also had a role to play, very interestingly. Now, what role did India play? So India was being represented by Mrs. Gandhi at that point in time. Mrs. Gandhi goes wherever the Stockholm Conference in 1972 is being signed. She very adamantly says one thing. When everyone is discussing, everyone is saying this is happening, there's a lot of chaos, pollution is there, transboundary pollution is there, we need to do something, some conventions must come up, etc., etc. Mrs. Gandhi, along with the fellow South Asian neglected regions that we are, developing nations that we are being labeled as at that point in time, and of course now also. So we took a stand. We said that yes, pollution is a problem, but we also have another problem in India. That problem is called poverty. That problem is called inequality. So I do understand that this conference that we're signing and we're talking about talks about the idea of pollution, but you also need to check what is happening in your countries. People were confused. What is she trying to hint at? So she wanted to hint at the differentiation between global north and global south. How very loosely the Western nations accuse the non-Western nations of polluting the environment, whereas at that point in time and even today we see a lot of Western nations contribute to the pollution in way larger amounts than nations like Africa, nations like India, which are the global south composition that we're talking about, because we've always been the regions of natural resources. We've been the places where natural resources, environment, and all these things have always thrived. And people have come and looted. The colonial rule was all about looting. So she made it a point there, very specifically stating that, yeah, I agree that pollution, etc., is a problem. Absolutely right. We are not denying with it, but there are more bigger problems in nations like India, like poverty and inequality, and they are very much related with environment. They are very much related with issues of pollution, etc., so on and so forth. So you cannot see pollution in silo, or let's say in an isolated forum, and not consider other factors being an important stakeholder. So she made sense. And when we read about these, and especially if you were to read the three waves of environmentalism and the kind of history that Ramchandra Guha has written, you'll see very interestingly Ramchandra Guha. In fact, you can find a lot of lectures on YouTube also. He says that in India, the evolution of environmental law and the evolution of the idea of sustainable development started with the lowest people at the lowest level. Now, when they said people at the lowest level, means the people who were the most neglected. Now, who were the more neglected? Some would say women, some would stand by the caste issue, whatever, so on and so forth. But very interestingly, we saw caste discrimination, class discrimination, and also very interestingly, gender discrimination. All of this gave voice to environmental movements. Now you will ask, ma'am, how is it possible? It's possible because if you look the Narmada Bachao Andolan, if you look at all these big movements that has taken place in India, as basic as Chipko movement, everyone, all these movements have started with one group being the advantaged group or the dominant group, whereas the other being a less dominant group or the marginalized group, right? And of course, I'll not go into the other socio-political debates, but per se, you see a kind of a power hierarchy here when you look into the three waves of environmentalism. And Ramchandra Guha very specifically, very interestingly traces out that how women have played a role, how children played a role, how senior citizens played a role. And this brings me also to a very interesting point, because when we talk about constitution also, I think we had Dr. Manoj very interestingly talked about how constitution is also a reflection of our sustainable development goals. Even very interestingly, if you look at the constitution, people have written about how the constitution assembly debate has contributed to the constitution, how various other people have contributed. Very recently, I was reading a book by Rohit Dey. For the first time, he talked about how middle class people contributed to the bringing up or writing of the constitution or the constitutional movement per se, because everyone had some role or some idea in churning the whole process of constitution. So when we see that it is all about the idea of power dynamics, the idea of who the marginalized community is and who is getting affected very largely. So very interestingly, we saw that these kind of developments took place in India. And once Mrs. Gandhi comes back in India, we see Water Act, Air Act, and so many acts, one after the other, very subject-specific acts coming forward. And the coming governments took the lead, and they've, legally, let's say, they've done a lot in terms of bringing good acts and, drafting good regulations to understand and make the people aware that, okay, if you do this, this is going to be the issues that are going to come up. So this is what we talk about in the Indian sense. Now, at a global sense, when we look at all of this, it's very interesting to see and very interesting to understand that in September 2015, a lot of the head of the states of different governments, etc., head of state and government, they agreed and they set up a world path on sustainable development. Now, sustainable development, we all know the word, what it means, and I really don't need to explain that. It means, sustainably and wisely using the resources but at the same time also making sure that, the future generations are not compromised upon. Whereas we have sufficient for us, but we also, make sure that there is sufficient for the future generation. So to sum it up in one line, we can very safely say that, uh, Mahatma Gandhi also talked about this idea, and we can very safely say in one line, there is enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. So that's basically the idea of, sustainable development goal, which we can talk about. Now, in 2015, what happens is everyone comes forward. They talk about the adoption of 2030 as the agenda for sustainable development. Now, in 2030, we need to review, what we are doing finally and talk about where the world is leading. So now these goals basically are nothing but they're providing a framework for, we call it in the three keywords: for the people, for the planet, and for the prosperity. And these need to be implemented for all countries and all stakeholders, and they need to work collaboratively. So this is the basic sum up of the idea of SDG, if we were to look at, what SDG means. Now, of course, very interestingly, the Vice Chancellor of the DNLU, where I happen to have worked, Dr. Manoj sir, very interestingly highlighted that, we have 17 SDGs, 17 goals, and all of these goals cater to different, issues that are there. One talks about, let's say, goal number one talks about, ending poverty. But the question is, will poverty really end? Or is there any way where we can end the poverty? Then you have very interesting goals. In fact, I am very interested in goal number 6, which is much of my research area. That is ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Then there are various other, goals that are there which talk about different aspects. And rather, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Manoj sir, they talk about more social and more economic aspects of day-to-day life. Now, the idea of SDG, or let's say the brainchild of SDG, was the Millennium Development Goals, right? We had 8 Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, which were agreed in 2000. And then in 2015, when we met again after 15 years, we thought we need to have an elaborate indicator, elaborate goals, and we need to review how the different countries are performing in each goal that is there. Now, this is very interesting, but this goal indicator, whatever we are talking about, has also brought about a lot of, discussions within the international community. Now, these discussions, if we look at and we look at how India is performing today as of 2024. Now, I'm talking about today. If we look at goal-wise performance, no poverty, we've actually gone up. But now this brings us to the question, when we say that we've performed very well in no poverty, that means the average annual income has gone down. But has it decreased the inequality? That's questionable. That's for you and I to actually research and find about. But overall, we've achieved, or we are on track to maintaining SDG achievement for goal number 1, that is no poverty. For zero hunger, we've actually made no progress at all. We were the way we were yesterday, we are the way we are right now. For good health and well-being, we've moderately improved. Quality education, we've made progress. So let me tell you, my friends, these are the 2 areas, no poverty and quality education, we've actually made progress. Gender equality, we've made a little progress. Clean water sanitation, little progress. Affordable and clean energy, little progress. Decent work environment and economic growth, little progress. Industry and innovation, little progress. Now the biggest and the most important sustainable development goal, that is inequality. Zero hunger, inequality, we've made no progress. We are the way we were. Sustainable cities and communities. Now this is very interesting because we've been in the past, months and years talking about smart cities. We've been talking about that, we are doing very well and we've opened up toilets, etc. But very shockingly, as per the data, and whatever I'm talking about is not what I'm saying, it's very much available in the public domain. Sustainable Development Report 2024, you just have to type that. So it says in sustainable cities and communities, we've done bad, we've gone down. In responsible consumption and production, again, we are the way we were. Climate action, very interesting. Now, this is very interesting because we've been talking about a lot of issues, lot of revamping of laws. We saw the Array Forest protest that took place in Maharashtra. We saw many developments that took place during the COVID. We were talking about Namami Gange project. We were talking about cleaning of Ganga. We've done that. As per the 2024 report, as per the report, climate action, we've done bad. We are decreasing as far as the track in maintaining SDG achievement is there. Life below the water, we are doing better. Life on land, it's still stagnant. Peace and justice, stagnant. Partnership for the goals, we are still improving. So if I were to sum and tell you an executive summary of 2024, how India is performing, first of all, we ranked at 109 globally. No poverty and quality education, we've done well. Climate action, sustainable city and communities, that is SDG goal number 13 and 11, we are doing bad. And for zero hunger, reduced inequality and responsible consumption, peace, justice, and life on land, we are stagnant. We are the way we were, no improvement, no decrease, just stagnant. Where there is little ray of hope, good health, there is a ray of hope. Gender equality, there is a ray of hope. Affordable energy, there is a ray of hope. Decent work environment, there is a ray of hope. Industry innovation, there is a ray of hope. Clean water sanitation, we see ray of hope. We see ray of hope even in life below the water. So this is as far as the report, as far as India's performance in the SDG is considered. So we see that India has been performing very mildly better, and there is a scope for a lot of improvement. Now, when I say there's a scope of lot of improvement, it is because this gives us chance to reflect and get back on track as far as the SDG compliance 2030 is considered. Now, a lot of people have doubt and they say, ma'am, I don't agree with the way SDG evaluation is done. I'm not even okay with the indicators. That's okay. I completely agree. There are two perspectives on this. A lot of people have problems with the way it is evaluated altogether. And there are a lot of people who negate the idea of SDG per se. But there are a lot of people who agree and commit to the idea that whatever the grading system and the indicators be, we should follow it and we should maintain and be on track. Now, for all those people, very interestingly, we see that in India, we have something called as the Niti Aayog's evaluation of SDG. Now, Niti Aayog, which is a think tank, because in India, we all know we have statutory bodies, we have constitutional bodies, but Niti Aayog, this is when I take an MCQ in class, usually people tick on Niti Aayog. It's a statutory body, yes. Constitutional body, yes. It's a think tank. It's not a constitutional body. It's not a statutory body. It's a think tank which aids and advises the government. So Niti Aayog, what it does, it takes into account the SDG goals that is there and creates a reflection of it in Indian sense. So we have Niti Aayog's data, which talks about our homegrown indicators and how we view SDGs and how we evaluate SDGs. Now, this is a very interesting data. If possible, please look at the Niti Aayog data, and even the Niti Aayog data very interestingly will show you the differentiation between North and Southern India, how they are performing. Now, very sadly, I would say there's a lot of differences in different indexes. So, for example, a lot of people who think, gender equality, etc., is very good, in the southern countries, and these problems only exist in the north. That's not true. Karnataka is not performing well. Karnataka is actually not performing well when it comes to wife beating or inter-partner violence, IPV. Shocking, but yeah, that's true. So, data and numbers reflect a lot. So, in India, we have called the Niti Aayog report. It publishes a report every now and then. We have a very interesting report, that is the NFHS report. So NHFS report, that is the National Family Health, NFHS report, National Family Health Survey, 5, etc., 5, 4, in different phases they do that. That also reflects a lot in terms of health exclusively, which talks about how we are performing as far as the health in Indian context is considered. So these data talk about different district, different state, different, regions, how we are performing and how well we are committing to the idea of, SDGs that is there. Now, why am I talking and why am I telling you all of this? Now, this brings us to one very important, let's say rather, question in our mind. Now, why do we need to actually study all of this and why it is needed? So there's a very interesting handbook, if possible in your own universities, try downloading it, or if you can find a copy, and you can purchase a copy, that would also be great. The handbook is called as the Cambridge Handbook of the Sustainable Development Goals in International Law. It's a very interesting handbook. I have been lucky to read a little, chapters here and there. It's written by Jonas and Ellen, and it's a very nice book written by Jonas and Ellen, and they try to explore, how international law, international organizations, US, international relationship, etc., and politics contribute to the sustainable development goals and their fulfillment per se. Now, I told you about India, how India is performing. Let me tell you, there are many other countries who are also not, able to, let's say, perform well, but are trying to, achieve the mark. So very interestingly, we saw and we see that in September 2024, there will be a UN summit of the future. Now, before the summit, what has happened is at the global level, there is a release of a report. Now you can Google this report again. This report is called as the SDSN report. Now, what is SDSN report? It is called as the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. That is SDSN. So Sustainable Development Report is released by the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, that is SDSN. So this report that we are talking about, 2024, it tells us that how all the countries have promised that by 2030, sustainable development 16 goals that are there, at least if not achievable, we'll be on track. Shockingly, this report says none of the 17 sustainable development goals are on track and they cannot be achieved by 2030. And let me tell you, make a wild guess. How much have we actually progressed? If I ask you, let's just, just give me a figure, or, just write in the chat box. If we've not progressed, if we are not on track, then where are we? What percentage do you think we've progressed? If anyone could answer, unmute themselves and answer, or probably write it in the chat box, that would be great. A wild guess would be okay. You can just write also in the chat box, that would be great. Do we have that option, Dr. Kalpesh sir? If not, then I'll go ahead.
Yes,
okay. So very shocking.
Sorry.
Yes.
Participant, any input from your side? You can unmute or you can put it in the chat box. Anything.
So any idea? We've not been performing well. We are not on progress, but we are trying to be on track. So what's the progress we've actually made since 2015? Any idea? Because it's 2024 and 2030 is just 6 years. Yeah, someone wanted to say something, sir. Okay, so anyways, I'll continue. So we've just progressed by 16%. Imagine SDG goals being devised and talked about in 2015, this being 2024, where we are almost nearing the deadline, and the progress that we've made as far as the SDR report, that is a Sustainable Development Report, is 16%. Now, this is shocking. This is very, depressing also at the same time, but this is the way it is, this is what the 9th edition of the Sustainable Development Report, which is being released, says, that there has been only estimated 16% progress globally being made by the people to, commit to the idea of sustainable development goals that is there. Now, this report that I'm talking about, it has highlighted few very important things. What has it highlighted? Number one, it highlighted that, of course, there is only 16%, targets that are on track to be achieved by 2030, but the remaining 84% that is there, they are actually showing limited or reversal of progress. Now, this is very bad. Reversal of progress means you are not stagnant, you are not making progress, but you're going in the wrong direction, right? So this report says 16% progress has been made, or 16% we are on track, but 84% we are showing limited or a reversal of progress, which is again very, grim situation here. The other important fact that it talks about is that the Nordic countries, like for example Finland, Sweden, Germany, Denmark, etc., they continue to lead on the SDG chart, whereas the BRICS are actually, that is the BRIC nations, are actually trying to show little progress. But the poor and vulnerable nations, they are still lagging behind. They are still at the bottom strata, which also includes poor performance by vulnerable countries, including small island developing states, which we call as the SIDS. Now, small island developing states, why I'm highlighting it here very specifically is we had a very interesting case going on in ICJ. A few orders were passed, and a lot of climate litigation is happening, which voice the concern of the people and the inhabitants living on these small island developing nations. For example, the litigation right now in the ICJ, which is going on, it's called as the Vanuatu Island litigation. Just Google it, you will get it, you'll get to know it. So Vanuatu Island is a very small island where you'll see the indigenous people are alleging that you are saying we are performing bad SDG goals. Please see the kind of transboundary pollution you people are doing. You're literally dumping your waste in our places, right? So this is why I'm highlighting. So it shows that Nordic countries are doing very well. BRIC nation are trying to do better, but the poor countries and the SID, small island developing states, are actually poorly performing as far as this particular situation is considered. Now, this is very interestingly, and then another very important, interesting fact that comes into picture is the financial issue. Because when we are talking about sustainable development goals, even when we talk about sustainable development goals in our college also, in organizing any conference or maybe teaching or whatever it is, finance become a big issue. Now, this is a long-term investment challenge that we're talking about, because sustainable development goal, we still have 6 years to go, and it's a long-term investment that we're talking about. So we really need to reform the global finance architecture. Now, this is what they've reflected very well in their what do you call it, this particular report that we're talking about. They say that the world requires public goods should be there. They should be more invested upon. The low income countries that are there and the lower middle income countries are there, they need to gain access to affordable long-term capital that is there, and more investment should come up. But the question is, who will do it? Which also includes an advice by this report which talks about global taxation. It talks about the priorities for global financing or investing in quality education. So these are the recommendations that are made by the report. Another important thing that they have highlighted in this report is that you need to bring people together on the table to talk. Now, when I say bring people together on the table to talk, I'm talking about global cooperation. Right now, in this, if you look at very interestingly, there's a country called Barbados. Now, Barbados ranks the highest in its commitment to UN-based multilateralism, right? And very interestingly, US ranks the last. Shocking but true. This is very interesting to see how that US, which is actually looked up to, and we talk about a friendship with the US, we talk about we're really obsessed with the idea of US. That's actually what it is. But they've been performing very bad when it comes to multilateralism approach, that as far as the SDGs is considered. Quite eye-opening, but that's true. A very small nation which we've not even heard about, Barbados, performs very well. It commits to the UN multilateralism and the treaties and the collaborations and the collaborative working that is there. So this is another eye-opening issue which the report talks about. The report also talks about one thing very interesting. Now, when I'm saying this is very interesting, it is because it influences people in India a lot. And even in the Indian performance, if you'll see we've not been doing good in this particular sector. Now, what is this sector? This sector is SDG target related to food and land. Food and land, globally, people are off the track. And even in India, we are off the track. Now, we're talking about the idea of food security. We're talking about agriculture. We're talking about so many things. We're talking about, especially, sustainable development targets related to food security, climate mitigation, biodiversity, conservation that is there. So all these, things we see that we are not doing very well globally, and even nationally, we are not able to, perform very well, whatever it is there. Now, we see that the investment needs to be there, especially when we're talking about productivity for goods which are very high in demand, let's say. And we need to also talk about issues which talk about inclusive, transparent monitoring system that looks into deforestation also. So this is very important when we're talking about food per se, and this is how we've been, this, what is this report trying to reflect? Okay, now we've done with the report very specifically. We've talked about how the history of environmental law was, and how India and globally we've looked into issues of environmental law, laws that are there, what SDG it is there, current state of affairs, how India has been performing, and globally what is the issue right now when we are about to have a United Nations summit in France, very close by in September. So how in all these contexts we are going to perform. Now you might say that ma'am appears to be a very pessimistic person, very critical person. She's talking about all negative. It's not true that we've all done all negative. We've done something good also. There might be something good which we can contribute, especially we in academia can actually do something. So now this part of the lecture talks about something which influences you and me. Now, this is a part where I'm talking about how do we, talk about these SDG goals, why are they important, and how do we include them while we are teaching, while we're in academia. Now, of course, you can think about it in a very singular lens, say that, ma'am, I wrote a very good paper, it's Scopus Index, it's in Web of Sciences, etc. Absolutely good. Contributing in academia in literary sense and writing paper does make sense, but let's start from the very basic. What is the very basic that I'm trying to talk about? I'm talking about something very different. I'm talking about the idea of looking at the blueprint of how SDG should be integrated into our curriculum, research, and partnership. Now we all know, I think 90% of the people who are here might be well aware with a very interesting word called IQAC papers. Ma'am, IQAC report, NAC is coming, etc. Right? So we all do a lot of things in terms of NAC. A lot of marks are given to the institutions when we say, "Arey, wastewater plant is there, good sustainable development," so you get marks. "Arey, ma'am, we are doing this, so NAC A++, whatever it is, right?" This is how we perceive. But let us talk about how you, me, everyone can make in tune our syllabus, our curriculum with the idea of SDG. Now, to look at it, I'll just discuss very quickly few ideas and blueprints that are there, which can, which you and I can propose in the BOS meetings, or even, generally by and large within our institutions. So we see that, first of all, first thing that has to be kept in mind is we need strong moral obligation, where we are talking about the higher education institutions to contribute to the achievements, celebrate them, and also to bring on track all those sustainable developments where we are not performing very well. Now, why I'm using the word moral obligation, because of course, if someone is not fulfilling the SDG goals or not following your curriculum, that doesn't mean you'll hang them, you'll remove them out of the job or whatever it is. Not true. So we all know the idea of law and morality, law and justice. I think basics, we all have studied about this. We've studied about the Spelentian case, very interesting. We studied about Plato's idea of the paradox that we've studied. We all know the differentiation. That's why I'm very cautiously using the word moral obligation. So we need a strong moral obligation of the higher educations to come together. And first of all, evidences of institutional commitment to the ethics, responsibility, and sustainability is required. Now, this is very much required, especially for institutions of, law, institution of management, institution of, security studies, institution of, business that is there, because these are the stakeholders which contribute very directly to the, let's say, engagement of educational institution with the SDG goals that are there. So this ERS commitment, that is ethics, responsibility, and sustainability, should be there. Secondly, we need to see, or in fact, we see that there is a shift towards sustainability and social impact, and higher education institutions have a very important role to play. Now, for instance, let's see in 2019, if you look at, we all know there is a magazine called as the Times Higher Education magazine, right? So the Times Higher Education magazine in 2019 for the first time came up with the social impact ranking. Very important because we all talk about GDP growth, we talk about so many things. But for the first time in 2019, we saw that the Times Higher Education magazine, for the first time, it came up with something called as the social impact ranking. Now, this social impact ranking is very interesting because what it does is it assesses higher education institution against their contribution to SDGs. So, for example, if there is any higher education institution in India, per se, for example, IIT Madras, IIT Delhi, etc., or NLSIU Bangalore for that matter, their contribution to SDG, how they've done, how have they contributed to the SDG commitment. So this is a very interesting data that came up. And it also talked about the idea of CSR, very important, very interesting. That is corporate social responsibility. Very specifically, they've included CSR with the business school ranking system. So it said that, this business school that you've established in India or, everywhere else, the CSR element in the curriculum itself, in the business school, will give you good business school ranking if you incorporate that within the given curricula that is there. Now, very interestingly, we saw that last year or a year before, we saw that United Nations Global Compact is one report. It gave its input and it said that we need to understand, we need to look at a report which is called as the business school ranking for 21st century. And very specifically, they mentioned in this business school rankings for 21st century that if we are to commit to, United Nations development goal, we need to have a new spark, or we need to have a new discussion about the role of business school in shaping the society, and also exploring whether business school rankings should be reimagined as far as to encourage the institutions to educate managers and to equip the youth in the coming future that is there. I find this is a very good solution and it is a very interesting move in the right direction, right? So these are the few things that are there. Another very important thing that the blueprint talks about, or we can also explore, is the research funding. Now, as far as the research funding, the moment I say it, all of us, we get a very big smile. We know about ICSR projects being sanctioned. We talk about seed money grants within the nation, etc., within our institutions, etc. But my very big question is, now this is a very big question again, because this is a question I myself in 5 years of my teaching career, plus the PhD work that I'm doing, I'm yet to explore, is what is the use of the conferences that we have nationally, internationally? I'm yet to, understand, because the idea or the ultimate goal of international conference and national conferences that I see in India very specifically, I'm talking about a very Indian perspective here, end of the conclusion of all the papers that I've evaluated, there is some implementation problem, therefore a new law should be passed. 90%, this is what it is there. Second observation is, something is wrong, empirical study is there, but you don't know the solution. That is the biggest issue. Third issue is, we have a very successful conference, we have a very successful deliberation, and a very successful, whatever conference, big people are invited, oh, very good, namaste, salam, whatever, it's done. What is the end result? We come up with an edited book, special issue journal. What is the social impact? These are all personal impacts. I was reading a very interesting piece of article in EPW day before yesterday, pressure on publishing. Now, this pressure on publishing has made people mad. We made people mad to a level where we're talking about perish or publish, right? So perish or publish, it's okay. I totally understand institutional rankings depend on it. But why don't we come up with a fundamental question of even questioning these rankings? What is the social impact? The idea of educating people, the idea of conferences is not to come up with a very brilliant edited book. The idea is to come up with a social impact. How were you able, for example, if there's a conference on transgender community, did you even look within the city or the state that you're conducting a conference? Did you even invite few people within the conference, which are actual stakeholders? One, if you invite, what was the post-conference, result that is there? So, for example, when we evaluate these seed proposal grants also. I'm telling you, very personal, very interesting fact. We say, okay, what are the learning outcomes when we look at the curriculum? When I'm talking about student perspective, seed grants, ICSR grants, we say there'll be outcome of this particular project. What is the outcome? Number one, what is the outcome? Blindfold, what will you write? There'll be an edited book. Or second, what will you write? There'll be a publication. There'll be 2 Scopus publication. There'll be 3 Web of Sciences publication. Agree, perfectly fine. Social impact, where is it? Nowhere. Social impact is the most neglected impact, sadly. I totally understand that, yes, we have, commitments to keep, but again, this is what I'm talking about. So research funding and, higher education, educational institutions that are there, they require international research funding. And this is where we also need to bring up international players into consideration. So for example, I know of a lot of good German based think tanks and NGOs which are very happy to fund people from India. And there are brilliant projects that are going about. I don't know how, what direction they might go. But there are international organizations which are very committed to the idea of SDG, and especially Germany, I think it's doing comparatively good. So they talk about, financial sustainability and internationalization. Now, again, this is a very interesting word, internationalization. Now, internationalization, people from the IQAC, people from, who prepare the curriculum, they might have heard. The moment we heard internationalization, we will get one resource person who looks different from Indian origin, means our conference is internationalized. No, internationalized means having a vision that is international, but your homework is regionally very profound. That's what internationalization is all about. Internationalization definition has been taken wrong for the coming years to go. And this is why we see, and this is, I'm very specifically bringing this here, this is why we see fields like, maritime law, for example, fields like, maritime law, for example, India should be very proud. In fact, Madras High Court has admiralty jurisdiction. We have so much in India already there that we really don't need to look at any other country. But sadly, what we see that, all these fields have been, let's say, pioneered by Western scholars, and this white man burden still persists in the research of, in the research and institutional funding level that we're trying to talk about. So again, here the question is that, this element must be brought about where we should openly talk about the idea of research funding, etc. when we're talking about, SDG goals, internationalization, stakeholder, engagement. Now, stakeholder engagement, however, because again, this also brings us to a debate where people say, NGOs are not doing anything, their licenses should be cancelled. Again, there are 2 narratives, which one narrative says NGOs are doing good work and they want to, think tanks and NGOs actually promote. I actually agree that yes, NGO is doing good work, but mushrooming of NGOs have taken place. So yes, we need to understand which NGO, or just for the namesake they're coming, etc. But they do at times play a very vital, important role where you have NGOs and think tanks who contribute to the research. So inclusion of all stakeholders must also be there when we're talking about, higher educational institutions that is there. So this is what, very interestingly we'll see. Now, in the SDG goal setting, etc. that we've talked about, we saw that there are, very important responsibilities, important action that must be taken care about. And of course, you cannot commit to all the, what do you call, all the goals per se. But education, we are comparatively doing good, and I'm very happy to see that. But now the question is, how can actually SDG goals help? Now, for example, I'll give you an example of business school. Now, I'll give you an example of business school, and then we'll try to compare it with law schools. Now, if we look at business schools, we know that, SDGs that are there, they are important for strengthening and enabling the future business opportunities that are there. Now, the question is how the given current and future business leaders, they should be given some tool to recognize what are the maximization opportunity for sustainable development goals. Then they can stand up to the global market and also understand and commit to the SDG goals that are there. So, for example, business has a need for sustainability for smart students that are there. So here we can increase the demand from business and policy makers to educate the graduate sustainability, sustainable students that are there. So for this, I think we've already come up with the idea of professor of practice. I think that's a very interesting and a very important, what do you call it, development that we've done. When we look at the Bar Council recent rule, which came up very recently, I think they've laid a lot of stress on AI learning, machine learning, etc. When I was reading through it, they've also talked about bilingual education. So I'm very happy with the idea of bilingual education, because again, from grassroots to the vision is from global to local. So again, it talks about, whatever, how this could go about. But the challenge is, how would this actually go about? It's a big question. And I think none of the conferences, none of the opportunities, or none of the events that are taking place in and around are actually talking about how do we implement it, what will be the challenges, or how we can go about the new BCI rules that have come up. And I think a lot of startups, like Kalpesh sir's being one, are doing really well, and I think we need more of them. We need really more of them to discuss about these issues, and bring people to question all these issues that are there, right? And then when we look at the curriculum, we also need to understand, now I'm talking about also legal curriculum and curriculum in general that are there. When we look at, we'll see that we need to rethink the pedagogy also. Now pedagogy, we are talking about innovative ways of teaching and learning. Now innovative ways of teaching and learning, or sustainability education that I'm talking about. So for example, I recently saw that people were talking about clean energy, etc. So one particular day, there was an institution, I will not name the institution, they said walk to your institution day. Today, no one, be it the teachers, I understand it's a menace, but again, it's a step towards the right direction. The teachers, whatever it is, who are within the radius of, whatever it is there, and you have to walk to your own institution to understand, that today you're contributing to the, what do you call it, consumption. You're not consuming energy at that particular rate. I know these are all not viable, or, not long-term viable solutions, but to start with, I think we can always develop the best practice model of our institution. And who knows that, this best practice model can actually be adopted by a lot of other countries. And who knows that, we can actually, celebrate tomorrow these best practice models that we're discussing today. So no bringing car or anything or vehicle, no vehicle day is what is celebrated as particular institution. It was a very nice move. I really appreciated the people who initiated this. So there are various ways which you can, innovate the pedagogy, teaching, learning pedagogy that is there. And this also talks about, amending recruitment policies also to promote diversity. And especially, this is another very interesting, factor that I'm talking about as far as the SDG goals is considered, because the recruitment these days, that what we are seeing. So for example, a very recent study I was seeing, it said that, the people, the SCs, were actually dropping out of IITs more. The dropout rate has increased. Now my question is, why? What is going wrong? We really need to revisit. And if we really need to revisit, we really need to make sure, because educational institutions are particularly safe spaces. They cannot be places where you discriminate. They cannot be places where you can actually, talk about all these SDG curriculum, etc. But you're discriminating people based on, gender, religion, whatever it is. So these are safe spaces. Now, when we are talking about safe spaces, I'm talking about individually teachers taking oath within themselves that today I'm not going to discriminate any student in material. Now, this discrimination also talks about a teacher having a bad day at home, coming to the class and just mercilessly, shouting or whatever it is. Because again, quality education would only come from a more responsive audience that we have. So as basic as that, so you really don't need to, talk about changing the whole curriculum altogether, but SDG commitment can go as basic as, day-to-day learning, teaching pedagogy that we're talking about. Now, partnership. Partnership is very interesting, where we can co-create solutions of stakeholders, especially when we're talking about law schools. We can enable a dialogue that could talk about increasing awareness of SDGs by, engaging in, let's say, general public, or encouraging social action that is there. or you can also have a cross-sectional dialogue to support SDG implementation that is there. So these are the few important things that we can actually look into while we're talking about SDG curriculum that is there. And very specifically, best practice model areas where we can talk much about how we can contribute in the larger sense. Now, when we're talking about all of this, this brings me to another very interesting topic. The first is, how do you systematically process to achieve SDG integration in your curriculum? Now, your question would be, ma'am, I understand these are the issues that you're talking about, whatever it is, but how do we systematically process the achievement of a SDG integration? Number one, what we need to do is we need to understand where we are as an institution, as a department, whatever it is. Second is we need to define the priorities and set goals. Now, of course, I'm saying 17 goals SDGs are there. Not necessarily all 17 your institution might be performing bad, but one or two you might be performing very good, 2 and 3 fairly enough. So where we should define priorities, we should set goals. So for example, gender equality, but you see in your institution there is no internal complaints committee what do you call it, regulations revised, where it is as old as dating back to the historical period whatsoever. So let's revise and relook at how it could be made possible. So that's also one way of going about. The third step would be to deepen and broaden the SDG integration. Now, deepen and broaden the SDG integration, I'm talking about cross-sectional or inter-faculty dialogues. If that could be created, that would be great. Last is the communication and continuous improvement through maybe feedback system, whatever it is there, and maybe this is how the systematic process of achieving the SDG integration can take place, right? So here what you can do is you can make a table. Now this table will have 17 goals, and these 17 goals could be our impact areas. Number one, you can talk about teaching, how do I impact it? Second, research, how do I do it? Third, partnership, how do I do it? Fourth, dialogue, how do I do it? Last, organizational practices or best practice that I'm talking about, what can be done to improve the SDG goal. And I think if each higher education, very specifically talking about law schools, do it, I think we can definitely make change at a larger level. Now, when we look at the school level, of course, the dean, associate dean, research center heads, department heads, etc. are responsible. But at the departmental level, also the academic program leads, program administrator, research leads, whatever module leads, whatever you call, they are there. And individual level also, as an academic, you can contribute as researcher, as module teaching professor, etc. And definitely this could make a lot of difference to the way we look at SDGs. Now, this also brings us a very important question as far as the resource allocation is there. Now, when you're talking about resource allocation, we need to think about few questions. Number one, what is to be done? Number two, who is to do it? Number three, when and how we will do it? Four, what resources do we need? What communication do we need? And what impact will it have? These questions, if we are able to identify, I think this would answer a lot of the questions within the curriculum revision and also per se all the dialogues that we have. So these are the few things that we can talk about. Then we talk about what are the practicalities or the frameworks or the actors that are there. So for example, when we're talking about understanding where we are, I said, how do we map the progress? Number one is we should understand where we are. There you should find out or map the status quo, that which SDG is more evident in your curriculum, in research center, in department activities, and which SDG in academics are championing the cause of SDG. That can be your area of boost, or let's say that can be your area for acknowledgement of being happy about. Second, when you're defining your priorities and setting goals, you need to understand how broad can be your SDG coverage. For example, if you're a very small institution, you don't have that much funding, then of course you will have to make it less. Then how deep is our SDG coverage? Where are we displaying clear and obvious SDG expertise? Where are the gaps? What are the focus areas, etc.? These could be the second question that you can answer. Third question, how do you broaden or deepen the SDG integration? There you can talk about how do we achieve this goal? What specific action should we teach? How do we teach and increase SDG relevance in our topic or in our subject? impact of our research, and how do we manage our law school as per the needs of these SDG. Last thing is the communication and coordination or collaboration. Here, what systems do we need to place in the map? What, record and analysis of SDG activity should we do? How do we report the SDGs, and what internal external stakeholders there will be there to create a positive system that is there, and what feedback loop are we actually following? So these are the various important activities which we can definitely undertake when we're talking about institutional building, when we're talking about SDGs per se, and this do make a lot of sense when we talk in the large sense. So today we are seeing that there is a high student demand for green content. Now, when I'm talking about green content, here I'm slowly shifting from UG curriculum to PG curriculum. So LLM program also, can be an opportunity to examine different approaches to sustainability that is there, right? So, for example, if we look at, Alexandra Harrington is a lecturer in environmental law at Lancaster University. She very interestingly says that, the LLM program on sustainability that we are teaching here, it includes about sustainable development and planning, agriculture, climate change, biodiversity laws, international agreements that is there, and it is co-taught by the scientists or co-delivered by the scientists which are attached to the environment center which the university have. Now, this is a very interesting way where you can teach your LLM students and make them more aware about the ground realities which are actually, that is there. So this gives a more hands-on learning experience, or experiential learning rather we say, which could come about, where all these centers that we have in these institutions that are higher education institutions that we have, Center for Animal Studies, Center for Jurisprudence, Center for AI and Law, etc., where we really need to incorporate this kind of an experiential learning that is there. So this is one way which you could go about. Also, one interesting reference I would like to cite here is where you need to see the data, whatever data is there. Please visit a website called Indiastat, INDIASTAT, indiastat.com. It gives a very good statistics about state level performance, national level performance, regional level performance, as far as crime and law is considered, demography is considered, financial institutions are considered, environment pollution is considered, agriculture, tourism, transport, etc., so on and so forth. It's a very interesting, it's a very good website which gives you all of this, and it will be very beneficial for all those people who are interested in armchair kind of a research, and therefore we can always revise our own ways that can be talked about. So this is as far as the curriculum that I'm talking about. Now, there's another very interesting paper which I would like to very highly recommend. It's called as the Coming to Terms with the SDGs, a perspective from legal scholarship. This paper came into 2023. Again, this is written by Ilyas and Edmonds, and it has been published online by the Cambridge University Press. It's a very interesting paper which talks about how you can tune in with SDG and from a legal scholarship perspective, how you can marry the idea of legal normativity, global sustainability, international law, how international law complements to SDG, and what are the indicators, what we can do about, and what are the discussions that we should lead in the coming times that is there. So this is a very interesting paper. It's called as the Coming to Terms with the SDGs, a perspective from legal scholarship, published in 2023, Cambridge University Press. So it's a very interesting paper written by Ellis and Edmonds, and it's a very must-read paper for today's topic. And with this, I think, Kalpesh sir, more or less, an introduction to SDG has been covered. I mean, I can speak more, but I would like to have a dialogue now.
Yes, definitely. So we can open for question like in between also, like you can conclude later on. Yeah. Participant, any questions, query from your side? Any remarks, questions, query, inputs? You can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself also. Request you can introduce yourself and then ask questions.
Yeah, Kalpesh sir, after a long time, I am Father Joseph from Kerala,
Father.
Margaret Mary's College of Law.
Yeah.
Ma'am, could you give me the name of the title of the paper which you mentioned last? coming terms with
Coming to terms with SDGs, a perspective from legal scholarship.
okay, thank you.
Ellis and Edmonds are the writers. 2023 Cambridge University Press. This is what I remember. Yes, sir. It's a very interesting, brilliant paper. It's very interesting.
Ma'am, I have a question also.
Yes, sir.
As you said, uh, we are below par, or we are not going to achieve the sustainable development goals in 2030. And do we have any serious discussions going on in this line in the country, or any kind of research or some project looking into what are the loopholes, why we are not able to attain the sustainable development goals?
Okay, thank you so much, Father Joseph. So this is a very interesting question. The thing is, globally, we are not performing well. It's not India alone who's not on track. Globally, also, we are not on track. Though we have a coming UN summit that is coming up in 2024 September, we are yet to discuss. And the report that I talked about, that is a Sustainable Development Goal report, which recently came up. You just have to type. It very specifically says only 16%. They don't use the word progress. 16% we are able to maintain ourselves on track globally, which means 84% there is non-compliance or some issue is there. The worst part is there are areas where we have deperformed or where we have reversed the progress altogether globally. And these are because of the long-term wars that have taken place. These are also because of the long-term tensions between the countries that have taken place, embargoes between the country, and many issues that are there, which are not only environmentally concerned, but there are many other things that are there. Now, when you come to India, of course, in India also we rank at 109, 2024. If we look at the report that is there, we rank 109. Two places we performed good. Performed good means we are on track. That is, one is of course the quality education. The other one is ending poverty. It seems that we are doing better. We are on track. But other areas, and very specifically, there are few areas, especially talking about agriculture being one. Specifically talk about climate change action being two. We have not performed very well. Now, why? Now, you've asked the question, are there any projects, etc., that are going about? Yes, there's always a call for projects that are reflected. I think recently, if you look at, there is a project called by ICSR on postdoc. And they very specifically mention if you align it with SDG goals, you'll be more than happy. But the problem is what I'm trying to reflect here very specifically, and all the institutions, they have seed money grants, more or less. They have seed money grants, they are organizing conferences, etc. But my question here is, or the point that we need to understand here is, we are stuck in a very, what do you call, unilateral approach of projects, a very unilateral approach of conference conduction. That is, at the end of the day, when something is published, ISBN number, very good. That's not the idea. The idea is social impact. Imagine at a global level, we are coming up with social impact rankings. So that is how important this has become. I am not completely shunning the idea of publication. It's very important. How will people read and understand if they don't have anything to read? But the idea is, where is the social impact component? The social impact component seems to be missing. And this can be very basic, sir, as basic as from the recruitment policy to how we are, having dialogues in the class, etc. What materials are we using? We can make our campus go no plastic. There are many ways of achieving. You just think for one day, you can just have a thinking workshop within our own institutions, and you will be, amazed to see the kind of ideas which your colleagues can also come up. For example, you can say today, for example, there's a very sustainable practice in the South where I see people eating on the leaf. But very sadly now, because I am teaching in Chennai, being, my in-laws are from Kerala also. So I see, everyone, eating on leaf. But very sadly, these days I'm seeing even in the malls in the south, people have started having the plastic leaf cutout kept in the mall shelves to give people the feeling that you are eating in a leaf and reuse it or whatever reasons. So we are actually going away from the way we used to live and look at things. Now, very basic. Let me talk about column. Column drawing is a very interesting feature I see in the south, where people draw some figures outside their house using rice powder, and they draw it outside their house, and it's the first thing people do it in the morning, to my understanding, because of course I'm a North Indian. I don't, I'm just I have my in-laws there, but I don't know the actual origin of the practice. But it's a very interesting practice. One day I asked someone, what's the whole purpose? They said, religiously I don't know, but I know it from a social impact purpose. I said, what is a social impact? Because as small as the ant, they feed on this rice grain, and they can start their day very feasibly, and it also bring positivity, etc., so on and so forth. So this is what that person particularly told me. I found it very amusing. Yes, it has a social impact. So our curriculum, our teaching, our pedagogy, our syllabus, our conferences, our publications, each and everything can be SDG aligned. We just need to think out of the box how to do it. And I think I have a reading of tuning in your syllabi with SDG. I will share it with Kalpesh sir, so he can share it with everyone. It's a very interesting book written by a professor in JNU, Professor Dr. Puneet. It's a work with Dr. Sanjeev Shantakumar sir, GNLU. I think Shantakumar sir and Puneet sir, they had a project, and they have tuning in your whole, how you can make your whole curriculum align with the SDG. It's a very good guideline, and I'm very sad that a lot of people, it has not gone to a lot of audience. It must. It's a very interesting book. So I'll definitely share the PDF copy with Kalpesh sir. Thank you, Father Joseph.
Ma'am, along with that, we have
Yes.
this 5.0, Industry 5.0, actually focusing on sustainability, environment, interpersonal relationship. That is also an interesting area.
Yes.
Very, very
See,
close
each
to our.
SDG, yeah, each SDG goal, Father Joseph, is explore worthy. I mean, they have given me the worst topic possible. They've given me introduction to SDG. You don't know how passionate I am. I wish to speak more. Kalpesh sir has given me the most difficult topic. I don't know why. Introduction to SDG. So this is the crispest introduction I can give to SDG, but very specifically, I'm talking about. So again, this brings us to a very good observation. So what international institutions do, they have bifurcated, and I think the new education policy is also trying to do educations. They are trying to bifurcate into research institutions, higher education institutions. So for example, your institution can be very good at research. You can become a very good model for being a research institution. Your institution can be a very good model for teaching pedagogy, etc. So now the question is, very interestingly, if you look at the institution and how we are performing, you really don't need to perform good in all the SDG goals. Take only 4 and 5 SDG goals, and when even your NAC is visiting, IQAC is visiting, you can even, I'm telling you, because that's a kind of an incentive we have. You can always tell that, we've committed to these 5-6 goals very specifically, and these are the best practice models that we have. So for example, our campus is a no plastic zone. For example, our campus, all the classes that we have from Monday to Friday, mandatorily on this particular day, we do the classes in nature, that is outside the class. You're teaching it in an open place, so that you are conserving the energy for that particular day. Very good practice. Very good, very nice. I've seen, in fact, in my own institution, I've tried to incorporate, come outside. Let's, today the weather is very good, it's not raining. Luckily, let's study it. And we will call it, see, this is the kind of incentivization. And the students also feel, oh, so I tell them, students, you are the ambassadors, or you are the youth ambassadors for clean energy. So today you have at least stopped from wasting a lot of, resources that are there, or why you have been wise in your consumption. So we can do it today. I think it is the way we can achieve. So it's a very international topic, but if you look at from globally and very locally, it has a very local, it starts very locally and goes globally. So that's my understanding. Again, I might be wrong.
Yes, I'm Triveni ma'am from Madurai Government Law College. I need a clarification. Recently Supreme Court have given a verdict that right to be free from climate change. That was the impact of the judgment that I need just from you, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. So this is a very interesting question. Ma'am says that, we have a judgment, and let's see, how this particular judgment, what are the kind of, impact that we have. Now, this brings me to one very important question. The question is that, we've talked about this particular judgment, that is the, if I'm not wrong, Ranjit Singh judgment, right? It is a very famous judgment, but no one has, Ranjit Singh, what is it called? Ranjit Singh versus Union of India, and others. Yeah, Union of India versus others. So we all celebrated a judgment called as Ranjit Singh versus Union of India, and people are obsessed about it. But people have failed to understand. Very recently, after the Ranjit Singh judgment, there's another judgment that came up, and I'm writing a piece on it. I'm about to complete it. People are not talking about it at all. It's also an Indian Supreme Court judgment. The judgment is called as a State of Telangana versus Muhammad Abdul Qasim judgment. Right. Now I'll tell you very interestingly. Now, ma'am said, what effect will it have on the idea that we're looking at? My thing is that when you look at the judgment and you dissect the judgment, number one, you need to understand what was the approach of the case. The approach of the court while deciding the Ranjit Singh judgment, it was nothing but to give a more rights-based approach that is there. It talks about the that there are existing gaps in the law and regulations that is there, and therefore climate constitutionalism or environmental constitutionalism should become a part and parcel of our dialogue. Second thing is, what was the focus of the court? The focus of the court was to balance both the long-term goals and the immediate goals. Very specifically, it talks about SDG, madam. How does it talk about SDG? It talks about renewable energy development and vulnerable community needs. It says we need to come up with a harmonious construction. Between whom? Between the vulnerable community that is there, and second, renewable energy development, because this is very important, right? Another important, thing that if we dissect this judgment and look at is what will be the future of this judgment. So this future of the judgment, we can see or we can anticipate that for the first time in India, we might start something called as climate related litigation. And this is my anticipation. And in fact, this is the anticipation of anyone who read this judgment, that this opens the gateway for people in India to sue those activities which are not environmental friendly, and climate related litigation can start in India. It could be a good kickstart, because what they've talked about a right-based approach. They've talked about more of the idea of that, environment is a part of the constitution itself. And when you make it as a part of the Indian constitution, it's very easy to litigate such matters. Now, when we see globally, there are many climate change litigations that are happening parallelly. So, for example, we started with, I quoted one judgment, Vanuatu Island judgment. Very interesting judgment. I think all of us must read about it. It talks about indigenous group. So that was the first small island group, small island developing state litigation, but it opened the gate for whom? For many vulnerable communities all over the world, and it gave a lot of power to the people to litigate and bring people to talk about issues of climate change very specifically. So, for example, we have the KLM Dutch airline judgment. I don't know whether you people have heard about it. Do read about it. This judgment is called as the KLM Dutch airline judgment. This judgment is a judgment of the Dutch court which says that these airport people and these airlines that are there, especially airlines that is there, these airlines are doing greenwashing. Their advertisements, etc., whatever they're trying to do, they're saying, we are sustainable, we are doing this, and our emissions are okay. Nothing. They are false commitment. The picture is absolutely different. So what they're calling, what is the term called? The term is called greenwashing. Now, this KLM judgment has become the mooting point and the starting point for all the worldwide airlines to be cautious, and also at the same time be prepared that climate change litigation is coming. So in India, we needed this push. Ranjit Singh judgment, yes, it created this push, but now I'll bring you to another question. That question is, yes, this has played a very important role, opened the door for people for further litigation, talked about balancing of right. It is a rights-based approach, whatever it is there. But just a few months after this judgment, in another judgment, the court took a different approach altogether. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the Telangana case that I just quoted. In that particular case, if you see, the Supreme Court has said that, these climate change litigation and climate change issue that we are trying to blend in with the constitutionalism and etc. and right-based approach is actually coming from common law principle. And in Telangana case, what they did is they emphasized more about the idea of environmental constitutionalism through judicial review. Now, these are two conflicting approaches of the Supreme Court in the given situation. Though the intention is very good to open more, etc., etc. But I'm yet to see how do we balance out as to what approach we will take in India when we go forward. Is it going to be environmentalism or environmental constitutionalism through judicial review, or is it going to be the right-based approach through the idea of climate-based litigation being a part and parcel emanating from the constitution itself? So these are two decisions, not conflicting decisions. In solemnization they make sense, but the approaches seem to be little different. So again, it's very interesting to see how the Indian Supreme Court would progress or go from here. But it is actually opened, I would rather quote Justice Indu Malhotra, not related to this case. Justice Indu Malhotra in Sabrimala case said, in dissenting opinion, this particular case will open the floodgates for future litigation, although not related to climate litigation here. But I'm just saying that, okay, let's hope that this particular decision of Ranjit Singh will open the floodgate for climate litigation in the future. So yes, litigation wise, it has impact. It has actually identified the legislative gaps, but I don't know, the current environmental reforms talk in a very different direction, because I've been hearing in news there is a call for the revamping of all the environmental laws that are there and have a single environmental code. Now, how would that play about? It's very questionable. It's too early for me to even comment, but from an environmental law teacher, I find it a little threatening. So let's see how this goes on.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That is very elaborate answer and detailed answer. What I expect, I have got from you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
I think we have student Mihika Saraf. Mihika.
Yes, sir. Yes. So, hi, ma'am. I have a question. My name is Mika. I'm a fourth-year law student. So, ma'am, I was quite intrigued by the idea when you said about incorporating SDGs in curriculum. You spoke about how conferences must offer social impact and inclusive participation. And then you said how you should align your publications with SDGs. Explore upon that. So, can you like being a law student, I really want to know how we can align our publications or research with SDGs. So please elaborate and provide examples.
Okay. Mika, this is a very practical and a very interesting question. So, okay. So as far as your research and as far as your, the topics that you've raised, I don't know why first, this is again a very, I'm yet to find the answer to this. Why has it become for UG students, little load worthy to publish? Because I remember my days in my undergraduation, I never had a load to publish, but it's good. You start early, you, of course, you're ahead in the game. But these days I see, in fact, UG students are contributing much more, they're writing in very good journals as compared to other scholars. In fact, I see a Supreme Court, quoting a lot of articles which have been written by undergraduate students, so not undermining your strength altogether. But you are saying, how do we align it with the SDG goals? Now, when I'm saying how do we align it with the SDG goals, there are two types of research that is there, Mika. One is the armchair research. Armchair research is, I open India Stat, I look at the data and I write a paper, which is more comfortable, more nice, etc. Whatever it is, you can obviously do it wherever you want. I'm not saying it's a bad kind of a research. But the idea is, what more? What can we do? Now, in what can we do? What we need to do here is, if it's possible, probably empirical research. That would be definitely first suggestion, to go about. And empirical research with the help and aid of a professor, maybe who you have a good rapport with, you can definitely try, doing that. And when I'm talking about empirical research, please don't forge your data. Ethics and all these things need to be maintained. So empirical research could be one way of going about. Second thing, what you can do is, when you're talking about aligning of SDG with your research goals or research that is there, is writing on topics which are of relevance. Now, for example, people have writing on issues which are there. For example, a lot of people talk about women issues, right? I totally understand and appreciate that, there are problems in the loophole. There are many legislative problems, but my problem is that why do we fail to, and this brings the responsibility of the teacher also, why do we fail to not acknowledge the given data sets which are there? Now, as a law student, we very, or as a law teacher, we very microscopically see the topic from what black and white the law is saying, and end of the story. I think it's very important parallelly when we are teaching a topic and when you are also, there in class, to question about what is the relating policy, if there is any relating data set that exists with that particular topic, to make us more understand of the ground realities. Now, why I'm saying this, because at the end of the 5 years, when you come to practical terms, you'll be like, yeah, 5 years ka degree, it was all sham, and practical world is altogether different. It's talking about law and morality, give the bread to this person and the thirsty person, etc., etc. But in reality, things are at a very different level. So the idea is to teach the concept, but at the same time also make you aware with the running policy that is there and the running data set if it exists. So for example, if a teacher is teaching you about Water Sanitation or Water Act, they must definitely, and you must also explore areas where we talk about water pollution that is there, and you can write issues about it. And for example, the subject this semester you might be studying about ADR, ease of doing business, right? Ease of doing business. You can talk about what CSR components are there, how India is doing, how India is faring, quote those data, etc. Make people aware, because this is a time which gives you full freedom to explore the given data that is there. One, because much of the research, and this is an acquisition of legal scholarship in India, that we see all the topics very legally undermining other fields that are there. So for example, a beautiful intersection exists between mental health and law and psychology. The SDG element is there. For example, law and let's say very interestingly, the law and journalism that is there. We are talking about green journalism. Look into what timeline when the TV channels are reporting, what portion of their timeline when they're airing green, they are reporting on green issues. I think hardly you will find it. There was an era where we had special prime time topics, issues where we had rural journalism, where we had journalists like P. Sainath. P. Sainath, please try to hear. He's given a very beautiful lecture. I'm forgetting the name of the lecture. I'm sorry. It's on YouTube. It says as Nero's Guest. I'm sorry. Yeah. So it is called as Nero's Guest. Nero. Nero's Guest. Please hear on YouTube by P. Sainath. Very wonderful. So look at these topics which are very much there and try to look at from a more interdisciplinary perspective if you're really interested in research. Because when we are trying to deliver, see, even there are constraints that as a teacher we have. We cannot deliver everything. But at the same time, what we can do here is we can nudge you in the right direction. And I think keeping in tune with the given data set, whatever new data are coming that are there globally, internationally, etc., it equips you more. You understand the ground realities more. And if you want to do it on your own, pilot projects, or maybe you want to enter the field per se, definitely please go ahead with an empirical research that is there, and it could also go about. And also one more thing, earlier when we talked about internship, we talked strictly about internship in law firms. Initial days, I'm talking about 5 years back. Now, thankfully, with the changing time, people have started seeing law and they started seeing a career in research. They started seeing a career in think tanks. They started seeing a career in teaching. So you can also do an internship or RA-ship under professors, teachers, centers, think tanks. So that's also one way about of going. And I think this is my personal suggestion. Anyone who is interning, one internship should be a research internship compulsorily. In your 5 years, at least one internship, because it gives you upper hand over people who you cannot even imagine. Because when you're applying anywhere, your CV has to be in 4 quadrants. One quadrant is your marks, etc., how you perform. Second quadrant, theory. This is my 4 quadrant theory that I teach in the class. 4 quadrant, you tell your co-curriculars, debate, moot, etc., whatever. Then your extracurricular. Last one is community service and your research. And this is a game changer. This CV 4 quadrant theory is a game changer whenever you are applying anywhere. Social impact plus your own benefit. So again, this is how you can balance both. Yeah. Yeah, Kalpesh sir. I think
Thank
there's
you
one
so
more.
much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Another, I think, hand raised by Prajatantra. Very good name. First time I'm got to know this name. Over to you.
Hello, ma'am. Excuse me. My name is Kajal Chaudhary. So the name visible is wrong. Sorry for that.
Okay,
Ma'am,
no problem.
I'm a second year student from Delhi University. I've got a question for you. It is related to considering that ICJ rulings, including the recent one related to that you said that one out to, are advisory and do not necessarily result in tangible changes on the ground. So, to what extent have things changed in practice due to such rulings? Additionally, how can nation ensure that social impacts are adequately addressed, and what alternative measures can be pursued to bring about impactful and effective climate action? Because climate policy and climate action is a transnational issue that needs to be tackled by all the nations. And how does Vanuatu's background as a small island nation facing severe climate related disaster underscore the urgency for these alternative measures? Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay, first of all, let me tell you, this was not one question. Anyways, so yes, a very interesting question. Now, this is a proper legal question per se. So yeah, so when I said that the Vanuatu, island, Vanuatu Island, that is small island developing states, SIDS, litigation, it began. So this, for example, first thing I would like you to visit is the Vanuatu ICJ initiative. There's a whole dedicated website now. If possible, go to the website called as www.vanuatuicj.com. Yeah, this is what it is called. So it gives you the whole history and why, how, whatever it is there. Now, what is the impact of it? The impact of the ICJ judgment or the ruling is that the United Nations has adopted this landmark resolution for the first time, right? When I say the United Nations has adopted a landmark resolution that has come as an outcome of the ICJ judgment, which is the advisory opinion on the consequences of the country that it is facing because of the environmental harm or the climate change. It's a big move internationally. Now, when I say it's a big move internationally, because it saw the adoption of this resolution by consensus. People had a consensus while adopting this particular resolution. Now that the resolution is adopted, the court has actually commenced the legal proceedings that is there, and there's a widespread what you call dialogue going about, and there's a lot of issues that are being discussed. And the first thing that we see is that it has actually persuaded the UN General Assembly to make a lot of changes in the right direction. Right now, what has happened is this particular judgment has been backed by many countries. Now, when I'm saying it has been backed by many countries, many dozens and dozens of countries, if I'm not wrong, Fiji joined this particular litigation, and there are many countries who have backed all the people, and they've actually what do you call it, they've supported Vanuatu's climate change justice issue that is there. Now what happened is, as far as my knowledge of March in 2023, the United Nations General Assembly adopted this resolution from this particular advisory opinion, and it has talked about the obligation of the states with respect to climate change. And you see, the United Nations also talked for the first time about the right-based obligation in terms of climate change for the first time. So this has been a very good move in the right direction, and this has been very progressive as far as the advisory opinion it is there. Now, how does it rule about and how far we can go from here? I think this is exactly what you're trying to talk about. So from here, we see that, couple of litigations have already been lined up, and the ICJ is hearing a lot of, matters that are there. And if I were to talk about the impact per se, the impact would be at a more micro level. Now, when we're talking about international law, we all know, ma'am, you might be aware, we've talked about monism, dualism, specific adoption theory, etc., etc. Now, when you win and when you try to change the move globally, when you try to change the mood globally by making a resolution of forcing UN to come up with a resolution because of this particular golden ICJ judgment, you try to bring change in the national policies and law also. How do you do about? The national policies and the law in Vanuatu Island have actually halted wrongful practices, giving its allegiance and respecting the ICJ ruling. So this was one of the most important, impact that came out of it. Of course, it is the highest international court that has come up with this particular judgment, and the resolution was another important, thing that is there. But this is also brought another very important impact. What is the another important impact? If you look at the Vanuatu ICJ initiative, that website I told you, it also brought about the damages that were caused after the cyclone that hit the port in that particular region. The national government again took a very a very progressive and a very positive move by compensating the people. And when this was talked about, and when the local courts were talking about, this ICJ judgment played a very important role in backing their decision to go about in this particular direction. So this is one thing that these are the 2-3 things I remember from the judgment which has positively caused people to think in the right direction. These are the impacts. And also at the same time, one thing that we also need to understand is that this resolution that we're talking about, that I just talked about, the United Nations General Assembly resolution, this, what it is causing is, first, we need to understand that the states, especially the small island developing ones, they need to understand what level of development and harm can actually be be caused and actually affect these vulnerable people. So this dialogue creation has been created in the larger sense. And now what happens is, because of this, one more important thing is, this opinion has actually been translated into domestic law. And we've also seen that the national laws and the domestic laws are trying to comply with the requirements that has been outlined by the ICJ rulings that is there. So more importantly, this advisory opinion actually is a kind of an obligation to future generation and young people, so that you have to take into account our interest while you are coming up with any law and policy that is there. You cannot just do away with not looking into the interest of the future. So this is a progressive step, I would say, resolution and domestic policy and law change that Vanuatu Island brought about. Yes, Kalpesh sir.
Okay, so let us take up last question. Anyone to last questions, because we are about to reach 5 p.m. Yes. Any other last questions?
Any suggestions or recommendations also, that would be also great.
Ma'am, I've got another question. If anyone else is not asking, I'll just wait for
It will
one.
be then 2-3 questions. It will go to 5:30 then. Looking at your previous questions.
No,
please
it's just one.
Yeah, please, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, what is the current state of urban governance, particularly in relation to SDG 11? Because I'm working upon this field, urban governance on ground, and if you could provide an overview of the progress, challenges, or effective strategies in this area, and how can I go for a research paper in this field?
Okay, this is very interesting because I am also working on this. Very interesting. I'll have a dialogue with you once the meeting is ends. So what are we doing in terms of urban governance? I can only tell you from the perspective of rivers, because I think urban governance itself is a very big topic, and I'm not proficient enough to talk about everything. So my area of interest is rivers. So recently we had a meeting at the NIUA. I think we've also mentioned it in my bio. So National Institute of Urban Affairs, which closely work with the Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, and also the Namami Gange NMCG that is there. So what we're doing in terms of urban governance, they're doing very progressive work. They're trying to understand, the ecology of rivers that is there, what issues are caused to river. I don't know whether you're aware of it or not. We have a beautiful judgment in India which talks about the rights of nature in India in the river context, where you talked about right of nature being given to the rivers per se. And what we're trying to do at NIUA and NMCG, where I am also an expert consultant from the legal background, and when I work with scientists and people from different fields, we are trying to create, these SOPs manuals whereby the health of the river is actually taken into consideration when any urban activity takes place. Now, urban activity, we are talking about, industrial projects, industrial development that is there. We're also talking about large gatherings that come up to these rivers. So, for example, religious events that takes place, right? Will you put it in urban events? What event will you actually categorize in it, right? So all these events that take place, which bring a lot of people near, in and around the river. How do you manage the river ecology? What is the best way to go about? What should be the roadmap? Pre the event, post the event. These are the things that we're looking into. So urban governance, I think you should definitely try to get in touch with people from IIHS, Indian Institute of Human Settlement. Indian Institute of Human Settlement, IIHS, is doing a very good work, and they have a year-long fellowship also, if I'm not wrong. Once you're done with your law, if you're very interested in the infrastructure law, construction law, human settlement, but also at the same time your heart says that environment conservation need to be taken care, I think you should definitely join their 1-year fellowship program at IIHS and look into their work. So they're doing a lot of good work. And urban governance, my suggestion would be look at the kind of projects that NIU is taking care of, Ministry of Jal Shakti is taking care of. And in my opinion, a lot of good progress has been made in that sense, as far as the industrial development and urban development is there. But the biggest problems that still remain is fly ash out of these, industrial development projects that are there. Sand mining that is there in different areas, excessive illegal sand mining from river banks for the industrial development projects that is there. Then water pollution, ground water pollution that is there. Then what do you call your air pollution that is there? The noise pollution. There are many aspects to it. So I really don't think I can answer you directly, but we can definitely have a conversation once you're done with this.
Yes,
But it's
definitely.
very interesting. Yeah, but it's a very interesting area these days. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for all of your insight. I would really like to be in contact with you, and I've already shared a LinkedIn request to you. So if you could accept
You're very
it.
fast. You're very fast. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
See, Kalpesh, sir, we are in an era of globalization and localization both.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So last question maybe for my side, I have jotted down few points. Like last question, like any thought on like greenwashing and Consumer Protection Act? The things I know, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So I'll tell you a very interesting non-environmental issue, and then we'll come back to this particular question. So, for example, I had written in the EPW Economic Political Weekly a couple of years back, 2 years back, 2.5, 3 years back, when we were not even talking about privacy, etc. I wrote a piece with a fellow colleague on right to be forgotten. And now, right to be forgotten, everyone is talking about privacy, etc. And there's a lot of discussion. At that point in time, 2-3 years back, there was not a lot of discussion. So right to be forgotten, right to erasure, that is when your name is there and it gets uploaded in the case and finally you are acquitted. But the pre-trial level or, judgments at the lower level, etc., still reflect your name. You have a lot of problem in terms of applying for employment. There's a lot of issues that are there. So this became a mooting point. Now, greenwashing is a similar concept which people are still not talking about, but it will become one of the most major issues in the coming years to come. Now, why I'm talking about greenwashing and why I quoted the KLM Dutch Airlines case is because all these airlines that we're talking about, when it comes to compliance, be it related to Consumer Protection Act or CSR policies that are there, the amount of money they what do you call, they use in terms of advertisement is okay, perfectly fine. We are not, of course, your profit gain, it's your choice. But we have a recent Patanjali judgment on advertisement also, which talked about cautious idea of advertisement, which talked about the idea of you cannot misquote, buyer be aware, or what do you call it, seller be aware, or whatever, both the caveat emptor and etc., whatever it is there. So the idea with greenwashing is that these airlines which are saying that I commit to the idea of committing to not being so much polluting or carbon consumption or whatever it is there, to come truthfully to terms with the fact that yes, this is what I'm doing, yes, this is on record, what is the pollution that is being caused, and in terms of CSR, this is what I'm taking care of, and this is what I'm trying to do. A more transparent way of looking at the airlines, because airline industry, let me tell you, it's the most interesting industry because they also bank upon what do you call, we call it, there's a theory in economics, I'm forgetting the theory. It says when there is higher demand, then the prices go up, and the airlines industry do exactly this. When people want to book tickets within a festive period or whatever it is, so it's a profit making industry that is there, and they are definitely answerable to people whose life is at stake, and also at the same time who also need to understand that big money is involved, and you need to also answer to the corporate social responsibility, what you're trying to do at the ground level, and at the same time you don't need to misquote things. You need to be transparent when it comes to transactions, when it talks about your fuel discharges or your plastic consumption or etc., so be it whatever it is. In India till now we don't have this dialogue on greenwashing going on, and airline is one sector. You have other sectors also which are using greenwashing, but I hope to see with the Ranjit Singh judgment a lot of litigation.
Even the real estate sector, ma'am.
Yeah, that's true, ma'am. So
Yes.
I definitely hope to see, but because let me tell you very interestingly, the people who sued in the KLM judgment, Dutch Airlines judgment, they have threatened other airlines, be ready, next it is your turn. So now overnight people are trying to revisiting their advertisement, revisiting their policies, even their websites. It's they're revamping it again. They've openly threatened, it's saying that come transparent to the people, tell what you are up to. Otherwise, KLM Dutch Airlines compensation, we've asked, now you be ready with the same or more hefty kind of a compensation we could actually look into. At times I feel this is people call it is radical activism, but at times I think we really need radical activism to make people understand the severity of the problem that is there. So yes, Kalpesh sir.
Yeah, I think we are done with all the questions. You can reach out to, right? I think I will share your email ID, or already people started connecting on LinkedIn. So be in touch. So thank you very much, Nabeela, for let me tell all the participants, I know Nabeela since LLM days, if I'm not wrong, right? It may be 7 years, right? So I know, and then as if and I was feeling as if I'm listening to stalwart, right? I was chatting with Dr. Mona and Dr. Mariam. So yes, a lot of insight, I would say, and you have rightly set the tone for all the upcoming session where seniors are there, right? 25 plus years, and then you have done commendable job, I would say, personally at this age, and I came following, I would say, for long, and then great job in the environment and that respective area. So thank you very much for joining, and look forward to see you in future events also. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you to the organizers, and please convey my regards to Dr. Bharti. Thank you, Kalpesh sir. Thank you, Mona ma'am. Thank you, Mariam ma'am. And thank you everyone for hearing me out. Thank you so much. Have a great
Yes,
day.
thank you, Nabeela. Thank you for your,
Thank you.
balancing overview of the SDGs and the Indian policies, matlab aise. But whenever we will have time, na, we will discuss your best practice model. Actually,
Yeah,
ac-
definitely we should. We should.
yeah, yeah, because it is the topic on which we can have something in detail. Best
Definitely.
practice model.
Okay,
Okay,
ma'am.
okay.
Thank you.
So, sir,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
Thank you.
guys.
okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
Mona ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
So with this, we
Yeah.
can end our session for today.
या मैम श्योर 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 अभी आपको घर भी जाना होगा मैं तो घर पे ही बैठा हूँ या ओवर टू यू ठीक है आप रिकॉर्डिंग देख
Sir,
लीजिएगा
can you please share the email ID of Nabeela ma'am?
मैं करता हूँ ग्रुप में शेयर ओके थैंक यू
Okay. Thank you, sir.
थैंक यू
Thank you, ma'am.
थैंक यू
Okay, we will meet